What's up, guys? It's Josh here, back with another Kansas City Chiefs related video. And today we got my guy, the beat of KC. I've been wanting to get him on my channel for a while now. He had me on his channel a few months back, and it was a lot of fun talking to him. So I was super psyched to get him back on my channel. And Lucas, before we get into anything, like you always do with all your guests, just let people know where they can find you on social media and all that good stuff.
For sure. So the biggest one for me is going to be Twitter. That's going to be at the beat of KC. So the T is capitalized, beats capitalized, and then of KC. So that's where you can find me at. That's where you're going to get a lot of my engagement. I do have an Instagram again. It's the beat of KC. And my logo, as you guys can see right here, is going to be on basically everything. So that's how you'll notify who I am. So and then obviously the YouTube channel is the big one for me. Again, the beat of KC, and then the logo will pop up. So that's where you can find me.
All right, sounds good. So make sure you guys do that, and I'll make sure to link all your stuff in the description as well so people can find you. But uh, Lucas, first thing I wanted to ask you, how do you pronounce Travis Kelsey?
Kelsey. That's what I'm going to keep saying.
I know. It was like a big fuss on the TL today about that on Twitter. But honestly, I think Kelsey's just messing with the fans. I think it's always been Kelsey. I think it is Kelsey. And that's what he's always, because I feel like he would have said something a heck of a lot earlier if it was actually Kels.
I mean, it's Lumen from obviously the Titans. He's an absolute amazing, I mean, just personality anyways. He goes on his podcast, I believe, and I'm pretty sure this was, we talk about what we're going to talk about, and I'm sure that was a topic. He's just
Yeah.
coming back from the golf tournament where he's been with, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Timberlake. It's all joking around and stuff, and I'm sure that this was brewing for a while. So, I mean, and then he's getting everybody on board. Like Tyreek Hill's freaking out. He's got Chris Jones. Like what? So yeah, man, I think it's gonna come out that it was all a joke, but yeah, man, he's got people on edge. Like people are really questioning, like, have I been saying his name wrong this whole time? Like, what is Andy Reid thinking right now? Like, have I been, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know a lot of the other Chiefs players probably were on Twitter today and were all wide eyed, like, oh, I hope I haven't been saying it wrong all this time.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was funny, and I think Kelsey's really just messing with the fans, though, is what it is. But
Yeah.
so next topic I wanted to talk about, I call it my topic, Frank Clark. So he's obviously one of the big stories right now. I know there's not a lot to talk about. We're still a little bit of ways away from training camp, so kind of a slow news time. But one of the topics we can discuss is Frank Clark, his recent legal troubles. And you know what? I'm sure we'll get really in depth on this. But I wanted to ask you, what was your just reaction to that news when you saw that the first report, and then now that he's officially being charged? Just what are kind of your thoughts?
Honestly, I was unaware of the one that happened the very, very first time. So when I found out that this was the second event, that really kind of changed my entire outlook on it. And then the second piece is that it's an Uzi. And I can understand, want to carry maybe a Glock or a Beretta or something that
Yeah,
is just a handgun of sorts, but to be carrying an Uzi where it's more of a spray and pray type of weapon,
yeah,
then I start to question that. So I definitely think that where he was at, being in the state of California, and him living there and understanding, he should at least understand where he's located at. I mean, yeah, you messed up, man, and I think that's the biggest things for me. It doesn't matter if you're a football player or not. Understand your surroundings, understand the laws, and I think also set aside even the gun issue. It's the fact that even here in the state of Missouri, you have to understand that you have to have a front license plate. It's the same, it sounds like, in California.
exactly.
So again, not understanding or at least abiding by some of the simplicities of what is put in place. I think that right there is a big red flag for me, and is either stating like, hey, I'm above the law, or I don't want to participate in it. It doesn't look cool on my Lambo SUV, whatever it is. I think that was what's most frustrating for me, is the fact that it's just like I'm just going to be ignorant in this aspect.
Yeah. not to get too political with it or anything like that. I've seen a lot of people since this happened though say, "Oh, who cares? He's allowed to defend himself, carry a gun." Oh, I wonder if all the pro 2A people now are still pro 2A now that Frank Clark is in trouble for it. This isn't just a pro 2A thing. Like this was an assault weapon, like you mentioned. Like Uzis, like those are for offense, not just defense.
Yeah.
Now, people have said, Frank Clark was in an area in California, probably around where he grew up, where it's not very safe, and there could be multiple people trying to get him and his money. Maybe that's the case, but if you're Frank Clark, maybe don't go to that area anymore. Or if it is, or if it was actually the bodyguard's gun, like people have said, why wasn't your bodyguard with you? So he was there to take responsibility for the gun. Why did you just have it sticking out of a bag in your back seat? And then you mentioned something that a lot of people don't talk about. Why was your license plate not fixed? Because then you would have never gotten pulled over in the first place. They wouldn't have found the gun. Like this is just stuff that Frank Clark uh, has to take responsibility for. And now he's officially being charged. Now, do I think he's going to actually get 3 years in prison like he's facing? Probably not. That's probably something that there's enough loopholes in the legal system, and Clark has a lot of money. I mean, he could probably plead that down, but uh, it's still not a good look. I mean, it's still a felony. Like people need to realize that felonies don't just blow over,
Well, the
especially
thing the thing
given that
is
it's the
it's
second
two.
one. Yes,
It's
exactly.
two.
Two
That's the
of them.
problem.
Yeah, like he didn't learn from the first time, obviously. And then, like you said, you just got to know where you're at and what the laws are there. He knew what the laws were. He still willingly went out knowing that he had that illegal gun in his backseat. It's not like he didn't know. Um, but it's just unfortunate because I was already a critic of Frank Clark, and he had already been playing overall pretty poorly since he's been with Kansas City. Yeah, he had the 2019 postseason, which I've also debunked as overrated over and over again. And I'll debate people on that. But if let's just assume that he had a good 2019 postseason. Well, outside of that, still, what has he done? And then on top of that, you're getting in trouble off the field. It's just not a good look. And I know people say that Frank Clark may still be worth the contract or he's still valuable to this team because of his vocal leadership and he changed the attitude of the defense. Again, I have my concerns about that and how valid of a defense that really is for Clark. But the fact of the matter is, you have someone that has underperformed. He's been arrested multiple times now this offseason, and he's the highest paid player on that team for next year. I'm willing to bet there's at least a few players on the Chiefs that look at Clark a little funny in the locker room, on the practice field, and it kind of hurts that maybe that leadership pedigree he thought maybe he had, or that a lot of people think that he have. People need to realize that this person that you're calling a leader is facing felony charges. Like that's a huge deal.
Yeah, man. And the thing is this one that just came out was only for that first one. We haven't even, I would expect very similar situation to the second one. And now you're talking multiple felony charges. I do think that it'll get reduced down. I do believe personally he's going to be suspended to start out the season, just because these are felony charges. And I just don't think that the Hunts take that very lightly. I just don't. And whether it
Yeah.
is an NFL situation or if it's a Chief situation, I do believe that we're going to see something. And I've sat back and let people kind of, I like to peruse Twitter, but I don't always like to go out there and just voice what I see. But this whole leadership aspect, I think that's kind of something you can put on a resume, and it can be very, very worthy of that. But when it comes to the NFL, if you really break it down and what it comes down to, it's how you play on the football field, and that's what you're there for.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Honey Badger. The Honey Badger is a very vocal leader. He is a leader on that defense. If you go watch up a mic'd up of Frank Clark, I don't see a lot of leadership coming from him. Half the time he's talking about rap music, or he's talking about it's being too hot and he's gonna go jump in a pool.
Yeah. Do you
Stuff
mind if I
like
cut
that.
you off actually?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So a frustrating part about this whole debate for me is that you can't really prove either side, right or wrong, whether Frank Clark is a leader or not, because it's not like there's no really great way to measure it. But what really frustrates me about that, and I know you're probably about to get to that, but I just wanted to throw in my own 2 cents. You know, Frank Clark, there's a difference between being a leader and talking trash. Frank
Mhm.
Clark talks a lot of trash. There are
Yes.
a lot of defensive ends, there are a lot of players that can talk trash for a lot cheaper than Frank Clark. And a lot of people think that that attitude and that edge and that trash talk that he does was a reason for the defense improving since he's been here. There's also two other major moves that the Chiefs made in addition to Frank Clark that also is a big reason, if not the lone reason, for the defense progressing the way it did. That's hiring Steve Spagnuolo, who can actually call a defense as opposed to Bob Sutton, and bringing in Tyrann Mathieu, like you said. Uh, People, when they talk about Clark, it frustrates me because they say he's a vocal leader and the Chiefs didn't have that kind of leadership before he changed the attitude. Well, when you say that, you're suggesting that the players that came before him, such as Justin Houston, were not vocal leaders. Justin Houston was a vocal leader, but Justin Houston isn't viewed as that vocal leader, such as Frank Clark is, because Frank Clark happens to play on a better team than Justin Houston. If you swapped out Justin Houston and Frank Clark for the past 2 years, I'm willing to bet it wouldn't be a debate, because Justin Houston didn't get that luxury of playing on the Chiefs defense that it is now and having a defensive coordinator like Steve Spagnuolo. Justin Houston played on a defense that was pretty bad. And, you know, the defensive line also was a strength before Frank Clark got here. It was a strength already, at least in the pass rushing department. Was it in the run defense department? No, but guess what? Since Frank Clark has been here, the run defense still hasn't been great. So again, what is that leadership really doing?
Well, and my thing is you got to remember, like when Justin Houston spoke, it was for a purpose. It's not to, like you said, trash talk. Like I'm sure he had his banter and things like that,
Yeah,
but
they all
when
do.
Justin Houston talked, you knew something was being. I mean, it was serious. And I would also go to I would like to say, I think if you replace Justin Houston now, even on this football team, this defense goes from good to almost elite just because of what you're plugging in there. I think Justin Houston provides so much more, and that to me is a leader because not only is that individual performing on the field, but then also I feel like you're seeing like him contribute to being almost like a coach in a way. That's why I was always just a huge fan of Eric Berry.
Yeah.
I think Eric Berry did so much on the field, but also when it came to like assisting in video and breaking down film and assisting with the younger players. I just don't see that with Frank Clark. I could be wrong. I'm willing to admit
Yeah.
that, but that's just my personal opinion, man. And I just and again, I'm not saying Frank Clark is a terrible person by no means, but when it
No.
comes down to the X's and O's and like what you pay players to do, and that's to go out and perform, and we just, to me, we haven't seen that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. We haven't seen that. And quite honestly, I think this year is a contract year for Clark. It was a contract year even before this stuff. And now he's just making it that much harder on himself. But let's assume that Frank Clark faces some sort of suspension, misses some kind of time this year. Do you think the Chiefs need to go out and sign a free agent? I don't remember what your answer was before because I think we talked about this the last time you had me on your channel.
Mhm.
But have your thoughts changed at all? Do you see the Chiefs now maybe revisiting a Melvin Ingram or possibly bringing Justin Houston back? What are your thoughts there?
I think it's tough still because I think you have enough there that with kicking Chris Jones out, Derek Nottie plugs in. You have Reed there that's going to supply a decent amount of pressure from the D tackle spot, very similar to what Chris Jones did. And then you have a revolving door on the opposite side. I still think you would be good. I have seen the rumors of Melvin Ingram kick up again,
Hmm.
and kind of gaining a little bit of traction from what I'm seeing. Um, and so I think that would be interesting just to bring him in because you do have Taco Charlton, you do have, some of those younger guys that are still developing there. So I feel personally, I think I would be okay with that because I think Chris Jones is enough of a force on the edge and you could rotate some guys in that'll help plug that in. You're obviously adding Nick Bolton. You got a hopefully a healthy, what's the guy we drafted last year, linebacker. I'm drawing a blank.
Willie Gay.
Willie Gay. Willie Gay's coming back, hopefully healthy, and I got Hitchens, and again, your defense is, in my opinion, improved. So
Yeah.
I think that from an overall, to answer your question, kind of summing it back up, I don't necessarily think we need to go out and sign another person, but I wouldn't be against it if we did.
Yeah, no. So I would say yes, just because I clamored for it even before the Clark issues. Now
Yeah,
this only kind of amplifies that thought. Um, but to talk about Chris Jones kicking out to defensive end a little bit, which is part of the reason why the Chiefs probably are going to stand pat. Um, I personally don't see them making a signing, even though I want them to. We'll see what happens. But I actually made a video on it today. Chris Jones, my thoughts on him moving out to end. I think it's a good idea. I think Chris Jones can succeed out at defensive end. I think you can really switch it up on offenses and really make them play a guessing game with Jones. And it's going to be dangerous. It's going to be a lot of fun. However, I don't want it to get to the point where they're relying on Chris Jones so much for their edge pressure, because last year, even their edge pressure was not great. Melvin Ingram had a higher pass rush grade than anyone on this roster from the edge position last year. So bringing in someone like him just to rush the passer, I feel like would be a good move. He maybe doesn't have the edge setting ability. He might not be what he was a few years ago, but just someone to kind of fill that void, even just for a few weeks. And that way, you're not relying on Chris Jones so much to where you can have a pass rushing set that includes Melvin Ingram, Jerron Reed, and Chris Jones in the middle, pushing that pocket, and Frank Clark on the other side, assuming he comes back at some point. And having that pressure up the middle with Chris Jones and Jerron Reed could also help the edge players get the sack numbers that maybe they've been missing out on for the last few years.
for sure, man. I agree with that, and I think I definitely can understand and be, I if we're gonna go out and get somebody, I definitely want that veteran presence of a Melvin
Yeah,
Ingram or a Justin Houston for sure. I don't, but I think also we have to see. I think where they're kind of teetering the fence is going in, they feel comfortable. The question is can everyone stay healthy? We already saw,
right.
Kyle Long go down. Then I really think if, maybe like a backup, like let's say Taco gets hurt, then I really think you need to assess. Maybe we do need to go get a Melvin Ingram or Justin Houston. The question is another NFL team experiencing the same issues, and are they going through some injuries? And then they need to go sign someone like that. So that's where you're kind of flirting that fine line, and it almost does make sense to go ahead and get it done. But I think the question mark with Melvin Ingram too is how the contract, obviously. Is
Right.
he wanting more than 1 year? If so, he's probably wanting decent money. He's been injury prone a little bit. And so, yeah, I think that's where they're probably really, I think personally, it would be better just to go get Justin Houston from a fan perspective.
Of
I
course.
think he would fit well. So yeah, just it's going to be interesting, man. It really is. And I think that's what's going to be significant going into training camp. And that's going to be the one spot I'm really going to pay close attention to because, again, I do think Frank Clark is starting on this, suspended, and you're going to have to really see what is provided there at that end position. Like you said, I don't want Chris Jones to be out there full time. I want the different looks of him starting in the inside and then maybe shifting to the outside or vice versa. I do think you're going to start to see a lot more, coming off the edge from corners and even a little bit more of the honey badger just because this is the third year of Spags, and he's implementing, a lot more of what he's wanting. Those guys have been there. So I think there's just a lot that goes into that. And I think they're going to have to see it through.
Yeah. And if they still can't get that pressure, I think they have a lot of players that, Spags loves to blitz. He did it last year a lot. We could see a lot of heavy blitzes, and we got the dogs to blitz very well. L'Jarius Sneed's a great blitzer. Dan Sorensen's a great blitzer. Tyron's a great blitzer. Now you got Willie Gay, Nick Bolton. That's a heck of a group to work with, getting pressure with the
Mike
blitz. But
Hughes.
yeah, exactly. There's just so many names that you have that have been good blitzers, or I think have the potential to be good blitzers. But that being said, this Chiefs defense could really take the next step if they're able to get pressure with four. But moving
You
on
cut
though.
out. Sorry, Josh. I'm sorry. I could, it cut out for a second.
No, it's okay. I was just mentioning how I think the Chiefs defense could really take the next step if they can get pressure with four.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I really think you're seeing a lot of nickel in the NFL now. That's something I've talked about quite a bit. And, I think adding a Mike Hughes and going out and really kind of solidifying what you're gonna have that rotation in on that nickel spot. I
Yeah,
think
and Will
that's
Parks too,
where
who
you
again,
really
underrated free
Will
agent
Parks,
signing.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I For sure, for sure, and I think that's where you really start to see, just applying that for pressure, like it really kind of opening things up. And I personally am most excited for this defense. I think as it starts to develop, yeah, they're going to have some good competition. I mean, if you break down the schedule, they're going to get a lot of good challenges. And like the question mark really starts in is Travarius Ward going to stay what he's expected to do, and there's a lot, but I'm excited for this defense for sure.
Yeah, me too. It'll be interesting to see what kind of jump they can make. Speaking of jumps, though, I gotta ask you, of all the second year players on the Chiefs roster right now, who do you think can make the biggest jump in year two?
I'm gonna say Willie Gay. I'm gonna go right out the gate. My favorite position on the entire NFL roster is linebacker. I love watching linebackers, and I was beyond excited when they drafted Willie Gay. I definitely think having Nick Bolton there, obviously, Willie Gay's the topic, but I think having Nick there to kind of push him a little bit too.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a very, very good Willie Gay, and one that we've kind of been missing, I feel, for a while in that linebackers position. I think,
Yes.
Hitchens done what he could for what, really for what we've asked. I don't think he's been elite, but he's definitely not been the worst. I think you're going to see something special with Willie Gay, and they're saying he's definitely taken the strides. The big question was coming back healthy, but it sounds like he's going to be that. And man, I'm ready to watch Willie Gay play.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be one of my top answers, if not my, best answer is Billy K. I'm excited to see what kind of jump he makes too. And you mentioned it with Nick Bolton. He's someone that is a very smart player and can definitely help Willie Gay. It's going to be so fun when those guys reach their full potential, having them roam the middle of the field for the
Oh
next
yeah.
5 to 10 years. It's going to be super fun. But moving on to my next topic, with training camp coming up, I just wanted to get some of your opinions. What are you most looking forward to this training camp? Is there any position battles you'll be watching? Any players you're super excited to see them in action for the first time, really with the pads on and everything? What are you looking forward to?
I love obviously offensive firepower. I think it's tremendous. And I want to say receiver just because I want to see how things develop behind Tyreek Hill, and they go out and draft Cornell Powell. Like, is he going to get a decent amount of reps? But my honest answer is going to be the cornerback position, because I want to see who is actually going to step up. I think that there's going to be somebody that we don't expect, like a Bo Peep Key steps up. And I think that we're going to see somebody special. I think L'Jarius Sneed might be doing some good stuff, obviously. And I think that there's going to be a lot of really some hype around them and some expectations, because their schedule, like I said, is tough. I mean, you open up against the Browns, you got Odell, you got Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, the running game, Kareem Hunt. I mean,
Yes.
so you have a lot in that first game. Then you're going against the Baltimore Ravens. We know our division. You're still facing Devontae Adams. You got Julio Jones and the Tennessee. Like, they have a massive, massive challenge this season when it comes to facing very, very good receivers. So my eye is going to be on the cornerback position, just because I hope that going into the season they're healthy. I would like to see DeAndre Baker at least doing some stuff. Mike Hughes being fully healthy. And I think with the veteran presence plus some of the young, go get it mentality, that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, that sounds great. And actually, now that you mention it with cornerback, kind of sticking with the defensive back group there, uh, I just thought of it right now. A lot of the UDFAs they brought in now, it's a very low chance that UDFAs make the roster. But when you look at the UDFAs that they brought in, a lot of them are defensive backs. And I wonder if maybe one of them can surprise and make the roster.
Yeah, and I think because they know like DeAndre Baker is coming back from that. Just it reminds me of when I was a kid. We were in elementary school, and we would like do the pencil break,
Yeah.
And that's what his leg reminded me of. So I'm hoping that he comes back healthy. And I don't think that they're in anticipation of rushing him. So, but I definitely think that they see a spot for him. And then obviously, Travarius Ward is 50-50 at times, and you
Yeah.
expect him to be out there, but then really behind him, you got Rashad Fenton. And so I think some of these guys, they may want to, keep right there to the very end. And I do think one of them is going to sneak onto the squad.
Yeah, definitely. I could most absolutely see it. Um, I gotta ask you though. So training camp, obviously, it's not going to be fun for everyone. There's going to be some guys that get their dreams crushed. There's going to be some guys that end up not making the team. But of those potential players that might not make the team, is there anyone that you're really thinking about that you're like, man, this guy's really got to step up, or I'm not sure he's going to keep his roster spot? Anyone you think might be a surprise cut? What are your thoughts there?
My not so flashy first pick, and as soon as you mentioned cut, I immediately thought of Dorian O'Daniel. Him coming out of Clemson when he did, I was all for that pick because I could see and envision the hybrid aspect. We know that basically his level now is just special teams, and I think with how really we're kind of shaped up at linebacker and safety, and having that nickel more or less leaning towards a safety or a corner, or basically Dan Sorensen or Mike Hughes, or,
Mhm.
kind of that makeshift model. I just don't really see how Dorian O'Daniel makes this team outside of special teams. And then with Ben Neiman still being around, he obviously trumps over Dorian O'Daniel, I think, in that aspect, because he
Yeah.
was, I think even at one point he had the green sticker on his helmet. So
Yes.
um, I do think that that's number one. I think if I had to go for a surprise, as crazy as it sounds, this is just me kind of taking a flyer.
Yeah.
I think if Nick Bolton really steps up and you see some very good success early on, Willie Gay is healthy and it's flying around doing some good stuff. I'm wondering if Anthony Hitchens is still on this team.
Yeah, that's one that I mentioned a while back. I don't see it at this point, but that's definitely a possibility. Maybe Nick Bolton progresses really fast, like faster than the Chiefs think, and the Chiefs are like, man, we could really save some money with this guy. And they just let him go, or heck, maybe even trade him to a linebacker needy team. I'm not sure. Um, and it's sad. I hope you're wrong about Dorian O'Daniel, because it's just really unfortunate that they've never been able to find a role for that guy.
Yeah.
And it always seems that when he's gotten a chance to, and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and the whole coaching staff, they've always seemed to do this with some players, and it's really frustrated with me. There's always a few players on the Chiefs that just flash every time they're on the field, but for some reason they can never like get sustained, snaps. And Dorian O'Daniel has been one of those guys. Like I remember back in his rookie year in 2018, they let him get some run and he closed really well on his tackles. He can fly around. He's right up there with Willie Gay athletically. Like he is a monster athletically. And I remember last year, first game of the year, Texans game, they put him in at the end and he gets a sack on Deshaun Watson. Like I just never understood why they couldn't find a role for him. And I still refuse to believe he's worse than Ben Neiman.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with you on that. I'm wondering if at some point it just is understanding the playbook,
Mm-hmm.
and when you put him in just certain situations of, go do this, it's simple for him. Where maybe some of the coverage aspects, he obviously was drafted in the Bob Sutton era, and I've heard just insane things about his, playbook style, even from a defensive standpoint. Like they were some of the most elite veterans were like, this is some off the wall stuff. So maybe it was just so complicated that it kind of messed with them. But if I had to pick another one, it would probably be, honestly, there's a slew of receivers as well that I think may, like, is Demarcus Robinson going to make this team? I'm hoping so because I picked him up in fantasy, but that's a question mark, because if Cornell Powell really does come out the gate and is a special talent, you got Tyreek Hill, Byron Pingrel still makes this squad, I believe. Then the question mark, and obviously Mecole is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, the question is, does DeMarcus make this squad? So I think you have some spots. The one, kind of speaking to you mentioned, one of the things you're looking at, I'd be interested about running back too. Darwin Thompson, is Darwin going to make this squad? Like, he's kind of on the fence. Like, does he really even have a role? Because, you know, Clyde is going to hopefully stay healthy and get a bulk of that. Daryl Williams, I'm a pro Daryl Williams. I'm a big time fan of
Daryl
his.
the Barrel.
Yeah. And, I'm
And
Jarek
Jerick McKinnon too. I'm excited for him. Another underrated
Yes.
signing.
Yeah. So is Darwin going to make this squad? That's one, I just don't know.
Yeah. And then you mentioned receiver too, Demarcus Robinson. Yeah, it's going to be a numbers game at receiver. Another guy that I've heard good things about, Antonio Callaway. I think he
Yes.
might surprise a lot of people and end up making someone lose their job this training camp, because he's someone that's always had the talent. It's just about keeping his head screwed on right. But yeah, there's a lot of position battles that it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I've mentioned this one before. Colin Saunders is another one. That defensive tackle rotation, I don't know how he's going to find snaps. I don't know. Offensive line, there's a plethora of offensive linemen on this team right now. Ryan from RGR Football, listen to him a lot. Everyone knows, had him on the channel before. Someone that he mentioned that could be a surprise cut that we just have heard absolutely nothing about. You've heard pretty good stuff about the offensive linemen from OTAs and minicamp. But one name that I have not heard anything about at all that's on a dirt cheap contract is Austin Blythe.
Yeah, man. I think, I think that from a depth perspective, I think they keep him around just because he is that wily veteran that,
Yeah.
He'd be easy to keep. But yeah, man, I think that honestly though, my biggest take on the offensive line is we saw how just battered this thing got towards the end. And I think that that's something that they might even just add as many as they can realistically, and try to just double down as much as they can because of the injury aspect. So, I mean, I would believe that he would make this squad just because he's, a needed spot too.
Yeah, and that's my opinion as well. I think here's my thing. I think there's one guy that could be cut between Austin Blythe and Nick Allegretti. I think those are two guys that play basically the same exact role. They can play center or guard, and they're cheap. I think at least one of those guys is going to end up not making it. Maybe it's Nick Allegretti since he's been here. He knows the offense. Maybe it's Austin Blythe because, he started at center for the Rams last year, did pretty good. He also has experience at guard, started there for a couple of years. I think that'll be an interesting camp battle to watch. In fact, Nick Allegretti or Austin Blythe, I think that should be one fans should look closely at who's getting more snaps.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm a big fan of Allegretti. I think Allegretti has kind of that grit that you want as an offensive lineman, and he's always got that pick-me-up attitude. Like if the play is 20 yards downfield, Allegretti's picking up whoever has the ball. Like, come on, let's go. I'm a big fan of him, but obviously, again, that's something that doesn't always translate over into play. And if he has to go, then that's understandable. So
yeah, it's just a numbers game. That's all it is. Doesn't mean any of these guys are bad players.
Yeah, but that's also, I mean, that's what you want too. I mean, you want going into a training camp to know that there's battles. Like, I think that makes your players play harder.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does lead to injury, but coming out of camp, when you have good, clean battles, like those players appreciate, winning that spot and going into the season, especially a Cleveland Browns team that is definitely revamped. Like, you're going to be fresh, ready to roll. And I think that's what's good about it too, is, like, there's a lot of spots that are not shored up. Like the 2 spot for the tight end is, Noah Gray is coming on hot. We obviously haven't seen him do a whole lot, but could he overdo that? And like you said, the receiver spot, like there's a lot of good, healthy competition. And I think it's going to create a very good Kansas City Chiefs football team.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a lot more depth than they've had in years past. And I believe we talked about that last time we were together too, is, they did a great job just adding depth because for the past few years, the Chiefs have been very top heavy. So it's good to see. But all that being said, that's pretty much all I had for you today. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you were hoping I would ask?
I think he got most of it. I'm super pumped about it. My question for you is, are you going to try to, I know you're over in, on the east side of Missouri. Are you going to try to come up for training camp at all, or?
I'm going to try. So last I heard is the ticket purchasing page on the Chiefs website like wasn't even working. I don't know if that's back up yet, but I'm going to try my hardest to at least come out to a practice or two.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've been talking to Michael Darcy, and he's going out there, and I told him I'd at least try to make it to one. I went out and got a fancy camera. I got to show you this real quick. So I went out and got a fancy camera, so
Nice.
I can at least
hope. Gonna try to pull some players away for an interview.
Yeah, we'll see. I might end up just interviewing Josh and Michael Darcy on the side. So,
well, yeah. Worst case scenario, you got someone to talk to, right?
Heck yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for training. Like I've said of late, this is like a culmination, a big event for what football, really the start of football season, obviously, and I think it's just exciting because it's getting to be that time, and you can sense it and feel it, and that's exciting.
Yep, definitely. So that's all I got. So guys, make sure you check out Lucas's work, and you can also check out my work here on the channel and on showmefootball.com and kckingdom.com, which Lucas is also going to be helping out on as well. So yeah, make sure you guys check all that out. Like, share, subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this, and we'll catch you all next time. Peace.